So we've got quite a few more people registered. They will likely join us here in a moment. But Sangram, let's go ahead and kick it off with really, who is everybody? So Sangram, will you go ahead and kind of introduce yourself and let us know who you are?
Yeah, sure thing. So, hey there. Thank you, Mason. Thank you for letting this happen. Today is the book launch date, so I'm super grateful for doing this. I'm Sangram. I ran marketing at Pardot back in the days. I feel like that's been years, if not decades ago. But most recently, I founded a company called Terminus. It's been about 7 years. We run a whole bunch of things around account-based marketing. So if you're doing ABM, hopefully you've heard about us. And in the process, somehow ended up writing multiple books, which is not something that I ever thought I would do. My dad, I remember growing up, he used to say, Sam, if you wouldn't like graduate, that will be a big deal. So for him to know that I actually wrote a book or wrote books is a big deal. So I look at that as the greatest compliment of my life so far. So I'm excited to be here and joining with Mike and Nicole.
Sangram, I think my dad would just be impressed that I read a book, much less wrote a book. So I mean, I think that's pretty good. You're a step ahead. Mike Rose, CEO, Mojo Media Labs. Mojo's been around since 2007. I like to say we really got our start though in 2011 when we partnered with Hubspot. There's been two people that I can recall that has had just a tremendous impact on the trajectory of Mojo over the years. And the two tech partners that I like to talk about, number one is Brian Halligan with HubSpot, and the second one is Sangram with Terminus. I mean, you guys both have had just such a huge impact on Mojo and us personally, and just very grateful to be on the call with you today.
Yep. And hi, I'm Nicole Rose. The last name is not a coincidence. Mike and I are partners in life and in business. We both run Mojo Media Lab. So my role is to work with our team to ultimately serve the outcomes, right? So it's entirely related to the go-to-market strategy. I want to make sure that what we're selling is actually the outcomes that we're getting for our clients, and that we're all driving towards that outcome. So with Mojo Media Labs, we really focus on B2B marketing, and hence ABM was obviously a perfect fit for us. So we are one of the very first agencies. I think Sangram will kind of introduce how we met, which is fun. So that's me. And thank you so much, Sangram, for being here. It's a pleasure to be able to have you right as you launch your very exciting book here.
Of course. Awesome. So I'll share a quick story here. Like, I remember this was, Mike, correct me, what year was this? This was like 2016 or 2017?
Yeah, one of those two.
One of those two, very, very early. And we have been there as an ABM player just a couple of years into it. And then all of a sudden, like Mike emails and then texts and then shows up. Like, that's just like, that's in the world that we live in, that sounds crazy. And it was crazy at that time too. He literally just shows up and says, hey, look, you know what? I got a great agency. We do all these things over here. We want to figure out a way to partner with it. He was actually seeing the future ahead of what we could see. I remember walking out of that conversation feeling like, man, Mike believes in us and where ABM is going more than some of the people we just recently hired. Maybe we should be talking to them. But your conviction, Mike, during that time, that moment where you literally took the time to like, you know what, I'm just going to fly there. I'm going to just meet them, and I'm going to just share where we are, and I'm going to figure out a way to partner, figure out a way to get this thing going, was mind-blowing to me. And I'm so grateful that even today, as we continue to grow both as individuals and companies, I think we have continued to foster that healthy relationship. But that was a defining moment for me as well.
I appreciate that a lot. I can't take a lot of credit for that. I was thinking about this morning, and several years ago, probably 2009, 2010, I had a conversation with Simon Sinek, and he would tell me is that he would just pick up the phone and call Fortune CEOs just to see if he could have a conversation with them. And that always stuck in the back of my mind, that not only do we have to show up, but we have to really, everybody's human, right? I mean, we all have similar ideas, and when you have common subject matters or expertise, you'd love to even connect even more. So I took that page from him, and I just picked up the phone and called you. And we're in Dallas, you're in Atlanta, but it's just a flight. It's like a car ride really anymore. So thank you for accepting me, and thanks for being such a great friend over the many years.
Mutual respect. All right, Mason, let me know if you want to just keep going. We can just get going now.
Yeah, let's go ahead and dive right in.
Awesome. So this is the whole problem, this whole idea around go-to-market as we talk about, this is going to be conversational. I'll let all of you just jump in and share your topics and conversation. I can't see the chat. So Mason, you can pull all the conversation going in, but we're all just going to jump in and talk through this thing. But I wanted to start with this question, and you can maybe answer this question in the chat. Why do great companies fail? And I've been very specific about this question. I didn't just say any companies. Why do great companies fail? And when I say great, I think each one of us probably works for a company that we believe is a great company. That might be because of the vision that you have, the culture that you have, the people that you have, the product that you love, that you sell, the customers that you have. We don't want to, anybody works for a sucky company that they don't want to, like, hopefully you're not there anymore then. But for the most part, all of us want to believe you're part of a company because we believe in it and they're great companies. But the question is then, why do great companies fail? And why do they fail specifically to achieve their desired outcomes? And this question is literally the crux of this whole book. When in the introduction, we talked about I ran marketing at Pardot, we went from 10 to over 100 million. Terminus now in the last 7 years, we've gone from like 0 to about 50. And what I'm realizing in between two, not counting other boards or other just experience of other companies, but just these two companies from 0 to 100, I've made countless founders, countless leaders, marketing, sales leaders, CEOs, and I continue to come across this. They have a great vision, they have a great team, and they still fail. And what's interesting about that, just giving some data point on this one, is when I look about my family, I think about, that's my son, Krish. When we, he has grown, I think he has been in my presentations from the beginning of time. If you've seen any of my presentation, you'll see him grow as part of it. So this is him when he was 7, and he was wearing tennis shoes and basketball shorts and baseball t-shirt and a football in his hand. And he's like, "Papa, let's play." And I'm like, "What game are we gonna play?" And he said, "Well, anything is possible." And I think a lot of time businesses are like that in the early stage, right? We want to try any and everything. When you start that, you want to start and to do anything. There is something in it where how naive we are about the world actually becomes our edge, that we can go and do great things. But now with everything going on, as he grew up, he is now still loves blue and red. Clearly that those are his colors. But he found his passion in tennis. And now he plays that, and he's doing, that's with his coach Jack. He plays tennis like 3 hours a day. He literally comes home, throws the bag, and goes back to play tennis. What's interesting is I call it finding your lane of genius. This is really where he found that, well, this is what I'm good at. I want to do more of this, and if I do better at this, I could continue to get better and better and better, and eventually do good. And businesses are just like that. At some point, you get to a point where you start looking at everything and say, you know what, right now, this works. You might be a business today where you say, you know what, the way we sell to this particular use case in this industry, it works. It's repeatable, it's scalable. I call that being in a product market fit. So initially it was problem market, meaning you're trying to figure out if it works or not. The second is product market, meaning you actually know this works, and now it's all about just making the runs. And then finally, at some point, he wants to be legendary, right? We all want to be legendary in our businesses. If you're a tennis fan, you know who those guys are. And he continues to think and look at what they do, what they eat, what they wear, maybe too much. And I had to pull him back on that one. But he wants to become legendary. And I think all of our businesses, we want to have legendary businesses. None of us is here is to, hey, I just want to create something that nobody ever knows. No, we all want to create legendary businesses. What's interesting about all of this is that that's not what happens. I want to share with you a sombering stat that McKinsey put out there. They call it the valley of death. So you think about businesses, they start great, and then over a period of 10 to 50 million, they actually, less and less of those businesses become successful. Think about that. Starting a business itself is hard. Building it to $1 million is hard. Getting to 10 million is hard. and then actually dying. Like, you know, why? Like, it makes no sense. You at that point, you might feel you might have 10 years plus into it, and you might be like, now it got to be working. Now I want to expand. But actually, between 10 and 50 million, businesses die. And what the study shows, without reading all of those things, and again, the reason the book exists is because of a singular reason, that their go-to-market never matured. The go-to-market never evolved. The go-to-market stayed static. And I want to encourage everybody, if you can take one thing away from today's presentation, is that in order to go from a problem to product to platform, in order to go from being someone who just tried different things to become legendary, in between, you have to cross the valley of death. It's not a question of can you jump over it? Can you leapfrog it? The answer is no. You can't leapfrog it. You will have to walk through it. But the question is, how deep does it go? Where does it happen? So what I want to share with everybody real quick, and you can drop it in the chat today, I want to ask you guys, what is your go-to-market strategy? When you talk about this in your organization, what do you think your go-to-market strategy is? Is it sales-led? Is it product-led? Is it category-led? Is it services-led? And E being the most all-in, nobody answer E, customer-led, because that's ultimately the ultimate place to be. But between A, B, C, and D, which one it is? And Mason, you can tell me what majority of the people are saying over there.
So we've got it off to an early lead, product-led, but we've got quite a few people that are still voting.
Yeah. And Mike and Nicole, where do you guys think your organization is, and where do you see other organizations, a lot of your customers on it?
So for Mojo, we're product led, and many of our customers are also at the point of being product led as well, which means that they have at least, you know, a tried and true, and they know that their product resonates. And so now it's a, you know, heavier emphasis on repeatable, you know, marketing strategy and tactics to be able to then, you know, continue to get those right fit customers in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say the same thing, that I feel like we're product led, but I feel like it's iterative between product and service. I feel like they change lanes all the time. Somebody's leading, and then all of a sudden service leads, and then product leads, and then it goes in a loop, if you will.
That's correct. You know, what's interesting about this whole slide is, after having hundreds of like CEOs and folks that we've gone through the research for the book, what we found out is that most executive teams are not even aligned on this. And that starts the beginning of the cracks in the organization of figuring out where do we need to focus on. So for example, if everybody on the executive team said, and if you had this open dialogue around this and saying, well, we want to be what we are, but also what do we want to be? What do we want to be known for? So if you let's just take an example of companies that I think we all know, Calendly, that's a product, that is a Uber product-led company. That will be a quintessential product-led company, because that company, you know, Tope, who's the CEO, who goes to sleep, wakes up every morning with 10,000 new customers, right? Like, that is a proper full-on product-led company where the product sells by itself. It's a PLG model, product-led growth model. Majority of the organizations are in a sales-led go model, which means that your sales team, as long as the sales are doing the motions they need to make, that's how your actually business and revenue would grow. In some cases, like we started at Terminus, we created a category, and we say we're going to start with a category leading mindset. So each one of these things have their own nuances. We talk about that a little bit in the book, but the idea is to really have that conversation. So one of the homework, and there's going to be multiple pieces of homework throughout the day for I want people to take away, is that have this open conversation. You would be very grateful, because you would walk in maybe thinking one, and when you distill it, what does that exactly mean will inform you literally what kind of questions you need to be asking in your organization. It is very important to know this, because if you as a team are not aligned on that, you will clearly see cracks all over the place in your execution of your go-to-market. So with that, let me share something else. Here is when I wrote these 3 books. Like, you guys can obviously take a look at it. Each one of them has, in some way, I wish I would say, oh, I was so thoughtful, I built everyone on top of it. No, it just happened. So being honest about this, each one of them, the first book, I wrote it for marketers, specifically to help them think through, how do you think about ABM? The second book was the recognition for myself to the, oh my God, this was way bigger than I thought. It is the way businesses need to be thinking about it. It should be all account-based. And as I wrote the third book, Move, I'm like, oh my God, this actually goes even further. This is a C-level transformation change book. So I hope people look at this as like, if you want to change your business, I hope this becomes an operating manual for you. Somebody said it's an inspirational book. I hope it's not, because it's not going to inspire you. It's not. It's all about the unsexy part of the work. It's the hard part about running a business. And as I have helped see Terminus grow from 0 to 50, there are a lot of value of depth conversation that we had. And I want people to no longer just ignore them and let them hit when they happen. No, get ahead of it. That's really what this book is about. So let me pull this thing. And this is where I would love to get more conversation on is, when I look at the business world, think about problem, product, platform. Think about it, and maybe in the chat, just drop in if you think you're in a problem market fit, product market fit, or platform market fit. What's important for you to just realize the distinction here. A big aha moment for me was this. You could be a $20 million business and still be a problem market fit. I always thought, oh, problem market fit, ideation, it might be an early stage, just starting the business, a startup in a garage. No. You could be a $20 million business, $30 million business, and still be in a problem market fit because you do not have repeatable use cases. You do not have a way to figure out how 80% of your business will run without you trying to do anything new. If that's not there, you're still in a problem market fit. So drop in if that's not, does that shift your idea of, are you a product market fit or a problem market fit? The second part is the product market fit. This is where you go in and say, you know what, I know this works, the use case works, I know how to go into this industry, we know how these motions work. 80% of the work that needed to be done can be done. That's product market fit. And platform market fit is really your ability to look at the business and say, you know what, we can now not only have one product, but multiple products that we can sell to our existing customer base. But here is the kicker. Until now, the market has been expanded for you. The market is still the same market you're going after. But now even the market can expand because your products and services has expanded. And the value of death is in between. The value of death, the businesses fail. The whole McKinsey study that supported this research that we did in the book was that it happens not in these stages, but in between these stages. Companies have to transform, but as they transform, they actually go through this weird process of trying to reimagine, re-innovate. And as they're going through the reimagine renovation, they actually drop down in order to get back up.
Mm-hmm.
Sangram, what's the fundamental difference between the problem and the product? What has to happen to shift from one to the next?
Oh, it's a great question, Mike. The biggest part, and I'll be honest, I think Terminus, we'll just put ourselves right here in the middle of it. We were a problem market fit probably for the first 4 years of our company. Although people might look at it and not think about it because they're like, oh no, they have a brand, they have a product, they sell it. But the biggest difference is retention. If your retention at this point is people would, what happens in most of these organizations is you're able to attract new customers faster. So you feel like the business is moving faster, but you're not able to retain them longer. And you're not able to increase the value of each of those customers for a longer period of time. And that tells us that it is no longer, it is a repeatable acquisition process, but it's not a repeatable retention process. That essentially is we all know that businesses live and die because of their retention, not because of their acquisition. In the world out there today, raising capital is celebrated, getting net new customers celebrated. But what we really need to celebrate is keeping existing customers and getting them to see more value and keeping them longer, which is one of the truths in the book we talk about, is that retention is the new acquisition. use that as a rallying cry in your organization. Like retention is a new acquisition. If everything we could do, if I were to go back and redo anything, I would go back and redo the way we architected the comp plan for our organization to focus on our customers and retaining them. And before we spend more money on hiring the next salesperson, hiring the next CS person in order to drive our customer retention and value in it. That's one of the biggest reasons why companies never get over the squiggly line on product market fit, because they kept getting more customers, not retaining them.
Mm. And the interesting thing is, you have to then go down to go back up, right? Because once you figure out, okay, this is actually who we serve the best. And we know that if we can serve this client, we're going to retain them longer, right? Because it's not fair to say to client service, retain customers if you're not bringing on the right customers. So usually when you figure that out, you probably have a mix of customers that are the right customers and maybe ones that are not such, a great fit. And there's going to be some uncomfortable times, right? As you kind of like right the ship and make sure you're writing that so that you can bring on great fit clients that your customers, success team, if they're doing their jobs correctly, should be able to retain, right?
1000%. And here's something that Jeffrey Moore, I don't know if anyone out here have read his book, Crossing the Chasm. Don't buy my book. If you only has $10, go buy his book, because the Crossing the Chasm is actually a really, really good book. It talks about, and Jeffrey Moore, he was part of the research for this book, and he wrote Crossing the Chasm. He's still an advisor to Mark Benioff and Salesforce, and we literally had a meeting with him going through this that week as soon as he came back from his 5-day offsite or something like that. And he looked at this, and we spent a few minutes looking, and he's like, you got the problem market right, you got the product market right, you got the platform market right, but you don't have the right go-to-market team. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, at that time in the problem market, we had in the go-to-market team was marketing and sales. And he said, you cannot be a platform market company unless customer success is part of your go-to-market team. And not only that, it needs to be part of your go-to-market team, it needs to be ahead. This is the part that we made sure that we also introduced in the book. It is CS, customer success plus sales and marketing, not sales and marketing plus customer success. It's literally reverser of it. So for example, right now as an organization, we have 1,000+ customers, but we don't look at our net retention rate or net renewal rate for the entire customer base. We look at it in cohorts. And you will start seeing that in more as companies go from product market fit to platform market fit. So the other question, Mike, like what's the problem to product? Mm-hmm. But the difference, how do you go from product to platform, is actually identifying the cohorts of your customers that's going to help you move forward. So right now, this is another just this happened like literally 3 weeks ago, and this was in a room where the business was about 50 million in revenue, but only half a billion in valuation. Now, again, in a SaaS world, if you are 50 million in revenue, you typically would see $1 billion+ in valuation if you have the metrics right. The reason this company had 50 million in revenue, but only $500 million in valuation, and if you're talking to the CEO, the whole board was there, and we're talking to all the cap tables and everything. And the reason was because 30% of the business that they had wasn't repeatable. That was coming from places that they didn't want the business. There was more cost associated with keeping those. So you can look at your own business today and identify what percentage of our business today is something that we don't want. It's a hard question to ask at some point, but you have to ask that question. And when you get rid of that rid meaning not have it in the numbers, and you only look at the cohorts that say, these are the type of companies we want. This is the cohort, mid-market, over 1,000 employees with 100K in ARR, in high tech or manufacturing, like whatever those few things are. When you figure out the cohort that makes sense for your business, when you do the cohort analysis, you will find that that particular set of business is driving 80, maybe 90% of your revenue value. And from VC perspective, as I've invested in more companies now, the valuation of the business is 10x more. So if the same business, going back to the numbers, a $50 million business getting $500 million in valuation, we would rather have had that business have 30 million in revenue. And if they had 30 million in revenue with the right customers, or the cohorts that we thought, we would have had a valuation for them over 1.7 billion.
Wow.
So less revenue equals more valuation is mind-blowing to people, but that all comes down to not understanding how you look at your business.
What I love about that is we have a saying here at Mojo, say no to grow, right? You have to say no more frequently to grow probably even faster instead of bringing on wrong fit clients. So when alignment is such a problem in organizations today, and if your organization has made the shift from problem to product or product to platform, it sounds like you also need the right team on board to adopt that new mindset, correct?
Yes, you need a new team. And this is what's interesting about this, Mike. It's not that most organizations don't get the new team. I think most organizations know at different level, different growth, you need a different set of people with different mindset. Not everybody can grow at the level that you want, but that doesn't kill the business. What kills business is that there is no framework. There is no alignment around, okay, well, how are we going to look at success? For example, one of the best things we learned in the process of the book was creating a go-to-market scorecard, a scorecard that your acquisition team, business marketing team, sales team, customer success team, product team, everybody looks at it. We call it the go-to-market scorecard. It's, if you go to movebook.com, you can actually download that scorecard. You can literally use that scorecard. And 2 years ago, Mallory Lee, who became the head of RevOps at Terminus, she instituted that in our company. That has become the central way we run our business. Every Tuesday in our executive team, she comes in and shows the executive scorecard and says, here is all the details. There's no more who moved my cheese. There's no more where's my number. Like it's no. Here's the truth. Here's the acquisition. Here's the product usage. Here's where I see the business is going. Here's where the opportunities are. She's there for 15, maybe 10 to 15 minutes and she's gone. No more. So now everybody on the executive team happens to be a business leader specialized in their area of expertise. So no more of like, hey, let me defend this. No. Sales leader talk about how we're going to impact the sales. Marketing talk about how we can help for marketing. So nobody's defending any numbers. It's just taken off everybody's radar and nobody has to talk about numbers. Everybody's talking about what can they do to impact the numbers. I think to your point, the team is important. What I'm seeing more important to help the team, no matter what team you bring in, is a common language and vernacular around this and a scorecard that allows people to be the experts while you hired them. But a lot of times I think people are put in these silos and asked this, like, for example, the most ridiculous question of all times is asking a marketer, hey, if I gave you another $1, what would you do with that? Right? Or asking a salesperson, if I have another $1, what would you do? Well, they're going to only look at their own area and say, well, I'm going to run more ads. Maybe I'm going to hire more salesperson. But if you would give that $1 to a RevOps leader, if you truly have a RevOps person in your organization whose job is to look at the business from a numbers perspective, that person may be able to give you the most intelligent answer around like, hey, if we had more money right now, I think our pipeline velocity is down. I would figure out a way to create enablement training for it. But that's an insight that only somebody who's looking at these numbers and living by them without any prejudice can give.
Nice.
I'm pretty sure you have some amazing slides here that talk about RevOps that I've had the chance to take a look at. I think it's an incredibly interesting and relevant topic.
We don't know how many slides we're going to go through because this, to me, I'm so fired up about this topic and conversation. So if we get through 5, that's fine. And we would open up for Q&A. And Mason, you can just ask me to shut up anytime and open up for Q&A because this is about helping organizations transform and change. But I'll give you a few examples that I wanted people to think about for this just problem product platform so that it's really crystal clear. You cannot leapfrog this. I'm going to just repeat that again. You cannot leapfrog this. Every organization tries to leapfrog, will fall flat, has fallen flat, and it will hurt really hard. Point being, you have to go to the problem to product to platform to build a strong foundation. You think about HubSpot. We all know HubSpot, and Brian has become a dear friend. He also supported and gave the quote. And I asked Brian Halligan straight up this conversation. Did Brian, who owns go-to-market? And he's like, I own it. I'm like, Brian, you are a CEO at that time until he moved on to be chairman. You're the CEO of a publicly traded company. 100,000 plus customers. You got to have better things to do than that. Like he's like, no. As a CEO, I own only 3 things. I own the vision for the company. Like ultimately, my job is to reiterate that over and over and over again. Number 2, culture. If it doesn't work, it's my fault. And number 3 is go to market. But he said, I never talk about go to market because nobody gets in the organization. I own it. And that was an aha moment for me. It's like, wait a minute, the CEO of Hubspot, a publicly traded company, saying that he owns go to market. It literally further solidified that this is really an important thing. This is why why HubSpot did as well as they did. But let's take that as an example. We all know they started with marketing and SMB owners, but then they found marketing automation as a thing where, we can now focus on this thing, turn that into a product, made sure, and now we all know the flywheel that they have. Same thing for Salesforce. For 10 years, Salesforce did not go beyond CRM. Mark, as visionary he is, he did not leave CRM for 10 years before he acquired ExactTarget and all the other clouds that they have. So this idea of owning is super important. It's a long process. It's not an overnight change. You could be in one of these stages for decades. It's not necessary that it's not a monthly plan or it's not an yearly change. No, you could be in decades in one of these stages. Based on the research that we have done. But you when you look at McDonald's, this was my fun thing when I was doing some research. They started with barbecue and orange juice. I don't know if anybody.
Really? I didn't know that. Seriously?
I did not know that either. I'm like, oh my God. 1940s, they started with orange juice and barbecue until in 1948, they found out that people like me only eat hamburger, fries, and soda. So that's what they sold. And they shut down the offices, shut down the menu, put a new menu out there and said, this is all 3 things that we're going to sell. 87% plus profit margins on those. Obviously, we knew the history, but that was interesting to think about. Like they had to get to the product. Like that was their product. You can't be anything and everything. You could start there, but you have to center on the product. You think about Morning Brew or Skim. A lot of people who you may be following any of those emails, they started with a clear problem. Millennials, they don't like Wall Street Journal, so we're going to write an email every day to them. They focused on one product, one business newsletter every day, got to 3 million revenue, and now they earned the right to build a platform with marketing and tech and retail. Even if anybody's a Joe Rogan fan, like Joe Rogan started with answering Twitter questions, but he then focused on one channel. And that's why I keep harping on this, is to really own it like nobody's business, that one channel of product, and got there and now has $100 million deal with Spotify. So this idea of the problem to product to platform, I think you can apply from B2C to B2B to service industry, to any of those things. But what I've learned in this research is that you can't leapfrog it. You have to walk because it's a squiggly line. Cool. All right, Mike, Rogue, Nicole, anything that you feel like, okay, is this connects with you as you are running your business and building business, as you see your customers, or is this where you feel like, okay, now I get it, where do we go next?
Nicole?
Yeah, I was going to say, I get it. Where do we go next?
All right.
Well, I feel that reflecting back on Mojo and our evolution, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, I feel like our problem that we were trying to solve early on was bringing a digital strategy into our clients, and inbound really helped us solve that problem. But I think what we found is that over time, inbound in and of itself wasn't solving the broader issue, the bigger problem that we needed to solve, which was revenue generation. And then when we discovered account-based marketing, ABM, I felt like leapfrogged us into the product market fit. And as soon as we created, and we call it the quantum leap here, but I feel like that was when we crossed that line into a product market fit where we were able to get more focused by solving bigger problems with better methodologies and better technology.
Yeah. And I think you guys have nailed it, right? I mean, that area, you own that area now. Like that's something that you guys are known for. So now you own the right to do more and additional things. And I think there's a beauty in it. So let me share. Well, I'll skip those. There are like hundreds of examples, and Mason has all the slides, so he can share with anything that you want. But here's another point to kind of sit on. If you still are like, okay, I get the 3 Ps, but I don't know if my go-to-market is broken. So I'm going to give you some sombering conversation points that are probably happening in your organization right now that people just nod around and skirt around. And my encouragement to everybody is to, when you hear any of the words I'm about to share with you, do not nod at them and skip over them the next time you're in a meeting with somebody. Go into it. Ask the hard question. Go deeper, because this will literally either help you build your business or let it slowly die, purely because that's the nature of businesses. You have to ask the hard questions. If you skip on it, you're going to miss the next real great opportunity in your business. So I've seen this happen, and I've done that. So I'm not saying anything that I have not done, and I've learned to start asking those questions. But this may be happening in your organizations. Maybe you have customers today that excitedly come in, but you're not able to retain them. Maybe you have a couple of salespeople in your organization that are able to help you hit the quota every time it's end of month, but you can't count on them, and you can't count on a process. You can't predict, you can't forecast. You got a go-to-market challenge. You got a broken go-to-market process. Maybe right now you have your teams at the executive level is saying something, and the people at the execution level are saying something, seeing and feeling something different. You got a go-to-market issue. Maybe right now you don't know what to say no to. I love, Mike, when you say no to grow. If you don't have a culture like what Mike and Nicole are building, and you don't have where people can say no, you don't know how to prioritize right now, that might seem like an issue with a couple of people, but actually it's a go-to-market issue. Because if you know what your go-to-market process is, you should be able to say no to certain things very clearly, very openly. Yep. And I see these things happen all the time. Maybe right, if you're in a sales process where you're only talking about features, and you're not talking about all the other things that actually make the organization, what value you bring in, great. If you're talking about your competitors in your meetings more than your customers, you got a go-to-market problem. So I want you all to just digest these words as you see on the slides. I've tried to lay it out there from the research that we have done, is that these are the telltale signs in your organization that your go-to-market is broken. Mm-hmm. If any one of you have it, you could just do +1 in the chat, and we can continue the conversation there. But this is not something that you can skim over, and I've seen that happen. And every time companies skim over any of these issues, we actually almost rob the opportunity from greatness. Is you have a responsibility to ask, why are we not winning these deals? Why can't we predict the next quarter? Why can't we all agree on the same number? Why is it that our ideal customer changes all the time when we know that this customer is not good for us and it takes more bandwidth and more effort? Those questions are not being asked. You're robbing the organization of greatness. So let me ask the big question. So if that's the case, who owns go-to-market? In some ways, we've answered some of that question, but Mike, Nicole, you want to drop in what you all think? Who owns go-to-market? Or maybe in the comments, people can drop in too.
Yeah, I'd like to say Brian Halligan owns. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, let's cast all of our issues on Brian. I think
right. That's right. Yeah, I mean, definitely the CEO, and it's and it makes so much sense, really, because it needs to be somebody who has the complete vision across the organization. And the CEO has that, and it's so incredibly critical that the CEO is able to have that vision. And if they're unable to own it because they don't have the vision, then maybe there are some other issues.
I think just like account-based marketing, go-to market, because market is inherently in the framework, I feel that it gets punted to marketing, therefore the CMO.
Mhm.
And when I was writing my book, and I asked many CEOs about vision, I asked them to describe what vision was. And my favorite response was the CEO of Park Place dealerships here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And what he said was, vision to me is seeing everything going on around you at the same time. So he was essentially not saying per se, it's 3, 5, 10, 15, 20, 100 years down the road. He was saying, I have to see everything going on around me. And I think when I couple that experience with how you define GTM and putting ownership on the CEO, it makes perfect sense for me now that, yeah, the CEO should own go-to-market, because why would I ask a marketer to distract themselves with other things going on in the organization when in fact that is the CEO's role to do?
Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
as often as it can, what I've also found is when you ask the CEO, they will have that answer. They will have this conviction, like, of course. And then you ask the CMO, CRO, and their other direct reports, and they're like, of course not. The CEO is too busy. He or she doesn't have time for this. And there causes the divide. There is the issue that blunders a lot of these organizations from greatness, I feel. So as I think I'm gonna move on a couple of things. I think after this I'm gonna go to the MOVE framework real quick in interest of time, and then we can open up to QA. But I wanted to give, based on those things, a definition to just set the stage, because this definition might help just solidify everybody. Well, why is it the CEO owning it, and why does it make sense to have that burden on the CEO and of all the things that they have to do? First of all, I think Brian Halligan, going back to him, he said this, and I've used that as a quote in the book. He's like, this is not a strategy. This is not a project. He's called this a product. When I asked him, like, how do you define GTM? His definition of GTM is that it's a product. It literally said that, and it's on the back of the book now, because he said it's an iterative process for what's working, what not working. So very similar to how you described it, Mike. And in what we recognized in this, that it's a 100% process, and it's a process of transformation. You're constantly transforming the organization. So you can't sit on and you can't go on a weekend trip somewhere to figure out, no, that is vision casting, and that's different. This is about continually changing and seeing what works, what doesn't. The other part about this is that this is about you're accelerating your path. This is about creating this repeatable, scalable. A lot of times, though, we think about go-to-market, as you said, a lot of times it's a marketing thing. So it's a product launch or a sales channel, or let's do a couple of data sheets, and it becomes more of a project-y, as opposed to, no, this is about getting into the market. This is about creating a new market. This is about positioning ourselves into the market. So it's a much bigger conversation that needs to happen in our organization. The third part, which we've already covered, as Jeffrey Moore forced our conversation around this thing when we did the research, is that you got to have customer success ahead of sales and marketing. For this to work, if your customer success team is ahead of sales and marketing, meaning they're part of the sales and marketing process of figuring out which customers to go after to begin with, it will dramatically change your end results of your business. Most businesses would not have abysmal retention rate if customer success team was part of their ICP and development. But 90% of the organizations, I would even venture out to say 95% of the organizations, don't even consider CS to bring in that conversation. And that's a miss. And then finally, it's ultimately, nobody cares what department you're in. Your customers do not care if you're in a marketing team or a sales team. So they care about a frictionless, as much as possible, an experience that we can create for them. So ultimately, if you really want to think about go-to-market as a holistic thing, then it's a process that you have to consistently think about transforming your business, moving it forward, bringing customer success, marketing, and sales, the three teams that actually become your revenue team in the service of your customer. So that's a holistic definition that we try to get into the book about. So let me go to specifically the MOVE, because this is the part that I wanted to get people to think about and why the book came about. By the way, just a quick on the book. 80% of the book was already done before the 3 Ps came about. So we had written the book, got the move framework into it that I'm about to share in the next 3 minutes. And then really what I realized when we went back at all the CEOs and leaders, they're like, well, that's important to execute on it, but I need our business to have a business conversation. What stages? So the 3 Ps actually came afterwards, and we had to like go back and redo it. So it was a lot of learning process in it. But when we started the research on it, we had 50 questions to ask, like what kind of questions around go-to-market. And what we realized that ultimately, when we went through all of it, it came down to these 4 questions. And here's the beauty. As we went through problem to product to platform, your questions are going to be the same, but your answers are going to be different. This is key. If you, no matter what stage are you, you're still going to continue to ask the same question about who are we marketing to, how do we operate effectively, when can we scale our business, where can we grow the most. Those 4 questions continue to haunt for the rest of your business, because those are the 4 most important questions for your business to go. But the questions are the same, but the answers are different. So let's just apply those the 4 questions to the 3P framework. We talked about problem, product, platform. We talked about the go-to-market team being lead-centric for the most part, sales-led, founder-led in the early stage, account-centric. If you're an ABM, I think you could probably look at the center part. That's where you are. You're trying to build an efficient business. And now your go-to-market team includes customer success, as we talked about. So it's customer success plus sales and marketing. Let's apply the MOVE framework to it. What happens here is that if you are today self-identified problem market fit, you probably are going after any and everybody from a TAM perspective. Your operations are probably ad hoc. Your sales process is reactive, and maybe you have either a product-led like freemium model, or you may have salespeople just knocking on doors to close. That may be where you are, and that is okay. Nowhere here I want to stretch any organization to think and try to leapfrog it. It's okay. It's okay to be there, because that's where great businesses start. There's nothing wrong with it. I want to make sure everybody recognizes it's okay. This is where I started. It's where I believe Mike and Nicole started. This is how great businesses start. So it's okay. The second part is, this is the part where you start becoming more mature about what you're going after. This is where you think about segments. It's a very important word, because you no longer would be talking about, we have a $5.4 billion market opportunity. No, that's BS. Like nobody, you don't have 5.4 billion. You're not Airbnb. We have 100 customers in this particular segment that we can go and crush it. Makes a ton of sense. Your sales and marketing at this point are going to be more aligned, should be more aligned. And now you're thinking about campaigns that are proactively. I think ABM at this is going to shine in an organization if you're actually in this stage. So if you're there and you feel that, that's why it is.
You just took the words out of my mouth. That's where ABM kicks in, right? It's right there in
Totally
the spot in the middle. Yep. Nice.
Right there. And this is where now for if you have been doing ABM for a while, I think the new North Star for you, as you think about it, is now this idea of cohorts, and saying, all right, what are the top cohorts of customers that we should be going about? This is where operations become very strategic. You no longer are thinking about marketing ops and sales ops and product ops. You actually have revenue ops, a function that I believe is going to be the second most important role in the organization in the next 3 to 5 years, reporting typically directly into the CFO or COO or CEO, being the person who actually pretty much understands the business as good as and has the purview of all of it as a CEO or COO would. And this is where everything is now all about prioritization. That becomes the way you run your business. It's about sequencing things, and you may actually look at more of a full expansion. This is where I love the fact. This is Scott Dorsey. Scott Dorsey was the CEO of ExactTarget when ExactTarget acquired a Salesforce. He's the one who actually educated Brian and I when we wrote the book about this 4th thing. Is like when he ran ExactTarget, he said what kept him up more than anything was he did not know where they're going to grow. Was it should they be acquiring another company? Should they be partnering with somebody? Should they be hiring heavy sales model like everybody else? What should they be doing? I think this is the expansion is really about, where do you figure out to grow? So what I wanted to bring out was an example of HubSpot, again, as an example that we all are so familiar with. I wanted to bring that. I've done there are hundreds of companies that we did study on, but this might be something that a lot of us are familiar with. Let's look at HubSpot. Let's look at how HubSpot went through the 3 Ps and the MOVE framework. As we all know, we started with marketer SMB. We all remember their inbound machine and the website grader that they built right early. We all probably should remember, if not, and can go look at it, they had one of the highest churn new category out there as a business. And they have been very vocal about it in the early days because they wrote so much about it. It's a very, very high churn. Going about, like Mike, your early question was, what stops companies from going from problem to product? High churn. High churn kills businesses all day long. And they continue to focus on their premium model. They had to figure out what's going to work. What worked for them was the MA, the Pardot, Marketo, Eloqua, all of them coming together. And then all of a sudden, HubSpot became the darling for SMBs to do that with their agency model, really, really allowed them to go to a point where, I mean, you guys are obviously a big agency partner for HubSpot. That became the driver. I remember this conversation with Brian. It's like that literally pulled them out. And the acquisition of Performable, David Cancel's company that they acquired at that time, really brought in and pulled the product together. They didn't really have a product that worked until that point, but that really what solidified, and they sat on it for about 5 years to perfect it, to get it right. While they had all these other things going on, they were really fixing their product. And you look at it now, is they have the flywheel, they go beyond marketing, right? Obviously marketing, sales, customer success. 60% of their customers still come from free trial. The part that started their business, it's still true. What's also interesting about that is now that they have 100,000 plus customers, 100% net retention revenue, 100%. Like that changes the quality of the business. Like you actually become a profitable business. So they fixed from going from a high churn new category to 100% net revenue retention is ridiculously amazing. And what's even more profitable for them from a business perspective, that 40% of the revenue comes from agency partner program. So now they don't have to keep hiring bodies in their system in order to do it. They have incredibly lucrative incentive program. And you guys probably know more about that program and how that works and how it has established. But this is a use case as an example of an organization going through the valley of death of the 3 Ps, at the same time applying in some way the MOVE framework, obviously not applying the MOVE framework, but walking them through. I can go and look at it and trace it, like these are some of the areas where they moved along the way.
I can see this now, where in the problem area, you're probably spending not too much money on marketing, but a lot of money on sales. Whereas when you get to the platform side, when you can predict your revenue, or your most likely your lifetime value of a customer, then you can actually pour more money into marketing, right? Because you now know what the economies are to grow probably even faster, right?
1000%. I think now you understand where the business is, what are the drivers for the business. Early on, it is literally, that's why I wrote down sales led under that, because at that time you're just really testing a whole bunch of things. After that, I think by the time you get to platform, I think and this is what I'm learning, almost 60 to 80% of the business, when you're a platform market fit company, you already know where the revenue is going to come from. Now it's about, how do I bring the other 20%, or how do I go about that?
Yeah, I love how you give permission, quite frankly, at the problem market fit to say it's okay to be efficient. In fact, it really should be. I think a lot of companies, put too much effort and energy around trying to, create efficiencies way too early in the process. And they're not spending the time to talk to customers, to have the conversations that are needed, with the people who are, going to be experiencing their product, to be able to know if it's a fit or not. So, it's like they kind of just gloss past it oftentimes and try to get to, high efficiency and process and, this, that, and the other. And it's like, but it's the product isn't a fit. So you continue just to multiply your problem of churn and things downstream, which get to be harder and harder to fix the bigger you get.
Sounds like, Nicole, what you're saying is there's a whole lot of crazy in the problem market fit. So it only takes entrepreneurs to get through that, right?
Yeah, and I have to tell myself this a lot. It's okay, Sangram. It's okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's part of the journey. But you're absolutely right, Nicole. I think it was a conscious effort writing this book in the process. Like, you can't leapfrog, which means you have to go through the process of it. And it is 100% okay to not know what net revenue retention means when you're in a problem market fit. You don't have that. You don't need to worry about that. That is why we created in the book scorecards for problem market fit, different than the product market fit, different than the platform market fit, because those are distinct. But you should have a view into the future, but you shouldn't sacrifice the beauty of today of figuring this out. If you don't do the inefficient growth things, you'll never figure it out. You will get too tight and collapse by your own process.
Will you
Yeah.
share that URL you shared earlier, Sangram, on the templates for those scorecards?
Yeah, themovebook.com. You can just go to that, or when you get the book, you can. It's all over the book. You can do a URL, you have the scan code and all that stuff. But themovebook.com should give you everything.
And just want to repeat real quick so nobody forgets, the book just came out today. So please go to Amazon and check that out. And Mason, thank you for putting a link in the chat for that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and all proceeds go to New Story Charity. Like, people should check that out. They're a phenomenal charity that does, they're all focused on ending global homelessness. And I believe just like go-to-market is foundation to any business, having a home is foundation to any life. So, it's something that I'm very passionate about to support and do it. But this, I mean, I didn't go through every single deck and slide in it, because I think this conversation of understanding 3 Ps in the move at a philosophical level is so important in order for anybody to kind of adopt it and take action.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Well, as we're kind of wrapping up here, what I want to go ahead and do is let everybody know we are going to send out the slides following this, so that you can have the opportunity to go through, because there are some gems in this as to really some of the truths that you need to understand for effective go-to-market. The other thing is, we do have a couple questions. We've got 1 minute. So I want to go ahead and ask this one question, because I think it is really, really helpful. So this is from Gerald. The question is, does the go-to-market cycle work whether it's a vertical or horizontal positioning? So as I think through that, I think what he's getting to is, again, when we look vertically, we're trying to get, I think, more platform focused. So HubSpot was looking more at
industries, right?
Industries, less so than maybe job titles.
Yeah, I think that the 3 Ps specifically, it is agnostic to that. It shouldn't matter which way you're going in. What's, I think, important to recognize is that it is a step-by-step process in a way. I've seen organizations who have incredibly well understanding of like, oh, we understand this part, so we're just gonna go ahead and move on to the other side. But until you figure that out, it could take 5 years, it could take 10 years. Case in point, I've been on the ABM bandwagon for now, I think like 7 years, maybe too long to even mention. But literally this year was the first year where Forrester and Gartner recognized it in their Magic Quadrants and Wave. So it took so long for it to actually, what does that mean? What it means that now all enterprise companies are going to come looking for Mojo, and it's going to keep come looking for vendors like Terminus to help them do ABM, because now it becomes part of their CMO checklist. And now there are going to be RFPs out there, which means the deal sizes. So all these things happen because of that one thing, but it took 7 years to get there. So what I'm recognizing, and I want everybody to also realize that it could take a long time. You could be in one stage for a decade, and it's not stalling. It's not saying that that's not good. It's not saying that you're not growing. It's not saying that you're not ready or you can't. Mark Benioff, Salesforce, they got to more than $1 billion in revenue before they moved on to it. So let's not kid ourselves that we can build businesses that just overnight changes everything. I think that's what gets people in the wrong place, because they too quickly shift and move into a different category. nail the category you're in, and make that work. And then I think you'll earn the right to do a lot more, regardless of being vertical or horizontal.
It sounds
Well
like
said.
maybe the return on the investment later is revenue, is cash, but the return on investment in the early stage is learning, right? You're learning, you're gaining knowledge in order to reapply that later to have a better ROI.
Absolutely will. Absolutely will.
Nice.
All right. Well, Sangram, thank you again so much for joining us today. Mike and Nicole, thank you so much for hopping on to share some thoughts. If you have any further questions, feel free to reply to the email that's going to send you out the replay, along with the slide deck and a couple other bonuses that are heading your way. So again, any other questions we would love to help answer. Sangram, do you have any closing thoughts?
No, just I want to help companies figure out what their next move is. One of the big things I want to do is help figure out, transform 100 organizations. So as you think about your organization, if this is something that you want to do, I don't know how, but by next year, I will launch a program that gets organizations into that cohort, into that process, because it's a long process. If you're interested, just hit me up, let me know. But outside of that, I want everybody to know it's okay where you are. There's nothing wrong with it. There are ways to get to the next level. Don't rush it. Take your time and do a great job at it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you
Well
for
said.
joining us.
All right.
And we'll send it out, all the information, relatively soon. Everybody have an awesome rest of your day.
Yes, thank you,
Great job,
Sandra.
Mason.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Sangram.